This one's for my mom. Hello, everyone. My name is Patricia Meredith, and I am an author of historical mystery set in 1870s in this one, 1901 in these ones. I am fascinated by Edwardian and Victorian history in America that is called the Gilded Age, and I am very character driven in my story writing. So I thought it would be fun today to go on a deep dive into my own history as an author. So, something that I will often say in interviews when asked, when did you start writing? When did you know that you wanted to be an author? And I usually say I was 9 years old. When I was 9, our elementary school hosted Patricia Polacco, a incredible children's book author who I absolutely adore. And she came to our school and talked about being an author and did some drawings, and it was just amazing getting to hear her speak. So my first name is Patricia, and getting to meet another Patricia who was a famous children's book author, as you can imagine, at age 9, this was incredibly influential. Not only that, but Patricia Polacco, one of her most well known books that she has written, is called Meteor. And it is a story based on a real event that happened where a meteor or meteorite, I forget what it technically should be called, but when a stone from space hit the ground outside of her little town where she was growing up, there was a rumor going around that if you put your hand on it, it would grant your wish. And it was one of my favorite children's books growing up. Well, then when we got to meet her in elementary school, so 9, I was third grade. So we were living in Ohio at the time. And so shout out to Sydney, Ohio. So she not only shared this story, but she actually had brought the meteor with her that was part of the story. And so as we all left the auditorium, she allowed us to put our hand on the meteor and make a wish. And I wished to be an author. That was my wish at age 9 as I went out of this auditorium. Please let me be an author. Here I am so many years later, and I am an author. I am an author of historical mystery, not children's books, which is what I originally thought I would be doing. So, what I wanted to share with you guys is I have this suitcase that has gone with me everywhere I've lived. It's always been this bag for as long as I can remember. My mom can probably tell you when we got it. But it has always traveled with me, and it has always held my original work from when I was very, very young. And so I thought it would be fun to dig through it with you and see what we uncover. And maybe we'll uncover some good ideas for children's books. I would love to go to children's books as well as doing my adult mysteries, but it's just fun, I think, to see where an author came from and where I might be going in the future. Who knows? So these are books that I wrote over my childhood. I love getting these out with my kids. My kids love getting them out. And I love how they inspire them to write their own books. So at some point, maybe I will share their books on here as well. But for now, I wanted to share mine. Yeah, they enjoy them. So let's see what we've got inside. All right, so I reached in, and this first one is called The True Story of Little Red Riding Hood. And this is one that I remember showing to my kids because they thought my illustrations were really funny. And you'll probably notice what my influences are with this particular book. If you've ever read The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, it is a true story, much like this one. Hi, my name is Mr. Alexander. I am also known as the Big Bad Wolf. Now, the reason my kids love this book, and I think it's really cute too, I don't know where I came up with this, but if you notice in the illustrations, every time you see the Big Bad Wolf, he's got a t-shirt on. And his t-shirt changes every time in every image and says something different. So right now it says, I eat whatever I can find. That's what this image says. And then on the last page, so that's the true story of Little Red Riding Hood. Now, whose story do you believe? It better be mine. Or I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll, oops, that's another story. So there you go. The true story of Little Red Riding Hood, written when I was 9 years old. So this next one is very near and dear to my heart. It is one that I specifically remember writing in 5th grade, and it is called A Fishy Friendship. And I remember having to make the book in order to publish this. It was a whole project that we had to do in language arts. And it's funny because this is the exact same process that I use for making my book earrings today. So, as you may have noticed, I am always wearing book earrings. And these ones are of my own book. Oh, there it is. Butcher Baker Candlestick Taker. And I need to make the other books that I have. But I love making these. They're so fun. A Fishy Friendship. And this is one I definitely plan on publishing eventually, because what we were asked to do was not only write a story, but it had to incorporate facts somehow. And what I decided to do was to incorporate facts around the borders. And so around each picture, and I had to draw it all myself. And this is another one where, like the t-shirt on the wolf in the other one, in this one, eventually you'll see there are bad guys, the barracudas. And whenever they show up, one of them runs into something and gets knocked off. So we start with a big group of barracudas, but by the end there's only a few. And I thought that was pretty funny. So just the first page here, and I won't read you the whole thing again. It was another nice day in the ocean, they say. Brad the pufferfish and Sandy the stingray were swimming. They talked about this and talked about that and just did a lot of finning. And then the facts is pufferfish are fresh and saltwater fish. Then along came someone they did not want to meet. It looked like a gang swimming down Main Street. Here it says, barracudas swim along quietly till their prey shows up. And so the whole story is about how they must overcome the big bully and chase him away. And don't worry, they succeed. And I remember the very last one, the very last page, tells us about the trio. Along the way, they make friends with a narwhal. I was fascinated by narwhals. Well, at this time, I was also doing swim team. And so around here, they swim off by doing an IM. And an IM is an individual medley. It's when you swim a length of each stroke. You swim the strokes in this order: fly, back, breast, free. And so I remember having to do that for swim team. So there you go, A Fishy Friendship. All right, so this next one, should be beginning the stories that I would write at home. So after writing several stories in 3rd grade and then all the way up into 5th, I would go home, and I grew up playing with my stuffed animals. So each of my stuffed animals had a very specific character, and we would tell stories. What's funny is now my kids do the same thing, and I love seeing the stories that they are telling. And I love hearing how that then influences their own writing, because they've started writing their own books as well. And so this book in particular is one of the first. It is called The Star Wars Adventure Club, the starting of it all. And as you can see, it's very advanced typing. I'm trying to remember if we would have had a computer at this point. I know at one point I had a Brother typewriter. It was a huge deal. It was the thing that I wanted for Christmas. It was a big Christmas present. And I could type my own stories on it. And I'm pretty sure that's what I typed this on. The story I'm about to tell you is the one we did in 1997. This one we sort of based on the movie Star Wars, which was just coming out with special effects. So that was the highlight of 97. We had already seen the whole trilogy, but it was exciting on the big screen. So here's the story. Hope you enjoy it. So I think that's why it's called the Star Wars Adventure Club. And basically we played out the story with our animals, and then I went back and I typed it all up. And so what's really fun is seeing the names of some of the characters in here and going, oh, I remember that stuffed animal. Because they were very much characters to me, and most of these ones that are named in here do still exist. Like, I still have them, just tucked away in a very special place. So it's really nice to see their names in print again. So this was the beginning of me realizing, oh, I enjoy writing these stories. And so pretty soon after this, I stopped playing stories with my brother, which is unfortunate, but that was because I realized I enjoyed writing them more. And so here we go into even more of them. So this next one is called Welcome to Mouseopolis. And this was the first one that I wrote all on my own. I just went into my room and wrote it up. And by this point, I think it would have been, yep, fourth grade. One of my favorite stories of all time is Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim, which is right there, Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim, which highly recommend the book. Not a fan of the movie, but that's a discussion for another time. But I love anthropomorphic stories. All of my favorite stories have talking animals in them, from Narnia to Wind in the Willows to Winnie the Pooh to a bunch of these series over here. Like this one is a whole series where a mouse solves mysteries. So I've just always loved talking mice. Well, this was my own story about Mouseopolis. And as I recall, it begins with going through a hole. Yes. So I can see the story through the hole in the wall, and then I get sucked into it, and I become small, and I have to help them solve the story, solve the mystery. And I think I get turned into a mouse. Yes, get turned into a mouse. So again, you can see my lovely illustrating work. But this was only the first story. There was then Mouseopolis 2, Return to Mouseopolis, I believe. Yes, Mouseopolis 2. And it looks like this one I never got around to illustrating, but I do remember writing it. And it featured my dog, Anya. So at this point in time, my dog, who was very precious to me, was Anya, and she was a black German Shepherd dog. And if you just heard that sigh, that is my current dog. Sighing up on the stairs, where she likes to make sure she's keeping a good eye on me when I am recording. When I am writing, she's usually to be found on my feet, keeping me company. Yes, you, Belle, that's who I'm talking about. So I will put her picture up here so you can see her, because she doesn't like getting her picture taken. So whenever I can, I like to share it on here. So Anya was my first dog, the first one that I got to own as a child. And she was a black German Shepherd. We got her as a puppy, and she was wonderful. She just got to be too big where we lived. She wasn't happy. She wasn't getting to run around free. And so we ended up selling her to a farm, which is funny because that's the usual story, right? But I actually did go see her out on the farm when she moved out there, and she was chasing pigs and came right up to me, and I knew that she remembered me. So, which I'm very glad, because she was my main counterpart in the first series of mysteries that I ever wrote. So this one makes me teary-eyed just seeing it. It's called The Adventures of Just Anya and Me. And as you can see, it is very well loved and stained. I specifically remember learning to draw a dog, looking at how to draw dog books, and looking up the German Shepherd and drawing her and making her tail wag and everything there. So it is really fun to see this and be holding it again. This is my very first mystery that I ever wrote. And it was about Anya, my dog, who speaks. What is also funny is that it is written from her point of view. So if you have heard me talk before, one of my favorite book series ever is the Chet and Bernie mysteries. It's not for kids, but it is one of my favorite mystery series that I come back to over and over again. Now, prior to that, as a child, I grew up listening to Hank the Cowdog. If you have never read the Hank the Cowdog series, you are in for such a treat. I highly recommend that you get them on audiobook, however. They are much better, in my opinion, actually, as an audiobook, because they are read by the author, and he is also a singer-songwriter, and so he sings the songs that are in them. He just does such a wonderful job. And so whenever we would go on road trips, that's what we would get from the library, was Hank the Cowdog. And I think eventually we probably listened to all of them. There are a ton of them, like over 50 of them. So they're really, really wonderful. So I'm sure that's what impacted my choice to write this book from the point of view of Anya. And this is something I will definitely be publishing someday, because it is very close to my heart. Anya and I go on a series of adventures in this one, and this one is definitely more of an adventure story, but it is a mystery. Like, she's trying to solve it along with me. It involves a treasure hunt. There are clues that you as the reader have to solve as we're going through it, and we end up saving my best friend, who is still my best friend. We've been best friends since I was 9, and that is Anne. And she also features in this book and in many of my books that I wrote at this time. So what's fun about this one is I actually did go back and I rewrote it. I think that's what's going to be in here. Yep. So I went back and I rewrote it and typed it up. Look at that fancy font. You can so tell this was written in the 90s. Yep. Originally 96, and then I redid it in 2003. So it's actually from 2003, so it's a little bit more advanced. But I went back and I made new illustrations to go with it, and I re-edited it and rewrote it. So there's an advancement of my drawing techniques, you can see. And so it features all of my family and Anya. And we go on a whole adventure, and it's still the same story. I just had edited it and updated it, and I would do that again before I published it again. But it's definitely one that is very, very dear to my heart. So that is Just Anya and Me, the first book. Now, like I said, this is the beginning of an entire series that I ended up writing. Also, can we just take a minute to enjoy the art of folders in the 90s? I mean, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So, okay. So the next one would have been, The Mystery of the Mermaid. Notice this fancy binding. I love that these still exist. Oh my goodness. And this is The Mystery of the Mermaid. They lived happily ever after. And always, these books are always written by me and Anya, right? And so this one, I, of course, get turned into a mermaid. Because what girl doesn't fantasize about that? And again, there's no pictures in this version. I think I edited it. Let me see. Did I edit it? Yeah, I did it once. All right, again, here's an advancement. Oh, but this one got all water damaged. So, and in this one, we're introduced to Rachel, who is a horse. So you see me coming into my horse phase. And in this one, I think Rachel tells the story. Yeah, Rachel tells the story. And so I ended up writing another one with her as well. So let's see, that should be the next one. Yep, The Enchanted Gold Mine. There you go. And again, let's just take a minute to admire, clip art from this time period. I mean, you guys, if you are a young child watching this, you need to be thankful that you have things like Canva. But it all began in the 90s. Never forget that. So, yep, this one's 98. So actually this one would have been before I rewrote that one. That makes sense. And so this one also has Rachel in it, and it's a Western, and with another treasure map and, explosions apparently, and, lots of emphasis everywhere on the pages. So it's so funny to see like all the underlining. I underlined so many things. So these are all connected. So I've got 4 books in the first Anya and Me series. No, 3 books. So 3 books. So there you go. Maybe someday these will see the light of day. Let me know in the comments if you think they should. All right, so then this next one is another one that I have considered rewriting many, many times. And it begins with The Mystery in the Bible Adventure. And once again, it's me and Anya going on an adventure. But in this one specifically, we get sucked into the Bible. So Paul reveals to us that the Bible is mixed up, and we need to set it back into the correct order. And it is all in the wrong places. For example, let's see. When Gabriel told Mary what to name the child, he told her to name him Moses, while Jesus is hiding in the reeds in a basket. Adam and Eve are going to be building an ark, while Noah is in luxury, and things like that. So everything is all mixed up, and so we have to go to each of the places and put everything back in the correct order. And I've always thought that would be such a great plot for an entire series. So in 2000, I actually entered this into a competition. It's called the NWO Early Youth Prose competition, and I was the only submission, so I got first place. Woo! I'm an award-winning author from back in 2000. This is one I would love to come back to, a story that I would love to come back to at some point. I believe that's all the ones that I wrote with Anya and me. So if I go deeper into this, so you've seen where my mystery writing began, right? It goes all the way back to Anya and me, to dogs solving mysteries, to animals, to twisted fairy tales, things like that, and then mystery writing specifically, right? Well, now we're going to look at where the history side of things comes in. And actually, it's not Edwardian or Victorian era. My heart was set on Tudor time period. I fell in love with Queen Elizabeth I. She fascinated me. And along with her, I soon also became fascinated by her father, King Henry VIII, and his 6 wives. So up until very recently, I would say up until about 10 or 15 years ago, I primarily read historical fiction set in that time period. Philippa Gregory, of course, and then Alison Weir is absolutely my favorite. She outshines Philippa Gregory at this point for me. Sorry, Philippa. But I much prefer Alison Weir's writing at this point because it is extremely historical. It is clearly written from a biographer's point of view. Anyway, I can go into that a whole bunch more. The point is, I've always enjoyed those middle grade books and young adult, I guess is what they would be called now, any historical fiction books set in the Tudor time period. So early on, I grew to love historical fiction, particularly through epistolary literature, meaning written through letters, collected through letters or diary entries, okay? And I particularly fell in love with Queen Elizabeth I when I discovered her through the Royal Diaries collection. Now, if you check out my video about some of the books that I have read so far this year, I included a bunch that I read with my kids for homeschool. One of them was the Cleopatra book from the Royal Diaries. But I'm excited to get into Elizabeth I next year with them. And so what I did for a project at one point, and I cannot figure out when I did this. I can't tell based on my handwriting or anything. So this is called The Rose Letters, and it's a biography of Queen Elizabeth I told through letters. So for example, the first one is from Anne Boleyn, and it's her writing to her mom and telling her that she is pregnant and that she just gave birth to a girl, and that the king is not too happy about that. And that is on September 12th, 1533. And you can see I was practicing calligraphy at this point, right? So then on the next one is informing her mother that she's about to be beheaded, that Anne Boleyn is about to be beheaded. You can see I even had a seal down there, and I tried to do different handwriting for each one, different styles. Well, then we move forward into Princess Elizabeth, right? And it's her writing to different people. She ends up having a friend named Samantha, who she's writing back and forth with, and her handwriting changes over time, and it was a way for me to tell her history through letters. And I've always loved this idea. I've always wanted to come back to it. So again, it's one that I have redone at one point. And again, I don't know where this file is. Based on this font, I'm going to say it's about the time as that other one. So probably 2003. I think I probably took a deep dive through and thought, okay, I'm going to rewrite these. And again, you can see I tried to do different fonts for different things. And so the handwriting changes, and then eventually her signature changes too throughout the book. It's interesting that when I first started thinking about writing historical mystery, I was going to write it in the Tudor time period, but at that point I was losing interest in the time period, and I had really fallen in love with the Victorian and turn of the century time period. So that's where I ended up with in 1901, and that's when everything was happening in Spokane. Spokane didn't exist in the 1500s, so I ended up instead in 1901. However, that doesn't mean that I wasn't interested in clocks. Here's something that I came across that I just was flabbergasted, and it's going to give you chills, okay? So look at this. This is The Case of the Missing Clock and Chimes that I wrote, and it's a Carmen Sandiego mystery, because at this point in time, the Carmen Sandiego TV show was one of my favorites. They'd released some video games, and I'm still waiting for them to re-release all of that stuff or to redo Carmen Sandiego, because history has changed a lot, and geography has changed a lot since that show. But there used to be Where in Time, Where in the World, Where in the USA. We still have the board game. So at this point in time, I loved Carmen Sandiego. So again, influenced by what I'm writing, right? Influenced by what I'm reading, what I'm viewing at that time. So this is published in 99. So again, we're still living in Sydney, Ohio. Here's what's cool. It's the case of the missing clock and chimes. So it's about Carmen Sandiego steals the clock and chimes that are in downtown Sydney, Ohio at that time. And I believe I am the detective. Yeah, Detective PR. And I have to solve the mystery of where she took it. And there's all sorts of, clues to where she is next, things like that. All right. So again, mystery with clocks. All right. Here's where it gets really interesting and really cool. Okay, so I included in the back some pictures. So there's me. Oh boy, with the clocks. I got to go into the clock tower, up to the clock tower, go to the clock chimes, the original chimes, and the original workings. But here's what I want to point out. Inside of the shed was the clock controller built by Seth Thomas in 1884, Connecticut. You guys, my main character in the Spokane Clock Tower Mysteries, if you haven't discovered those yet, they're written in 1901. My main character is Archie Prescott, and he works for the Seth Thomas Company in Connecticut. Oh my gosh, okay. And the only reason he works for Seth Thomas is because the clock tower, which still stands in Spokane, and the one that the entire series is built around, is them building this clock tower. The original designer of the clock and of the clock that is in the tower is Seth Thomas, the Seth Thomas Company. So what are the chances? Now, I know it's a little bit high because, Seth Thomas built a lot of clocks and a lot of towers around this time period for across the US, but still, it gives me goosebumps, right? That my original story in 99 about clocks and a clock tower and where I used to live in Sydney, Ohio, and then I ended up writing about them again in Spokane. You guys, I did not come across this until, a year ago. I was going to say a couple months ago, but that would have been when we moved. So it's about a year ago that I came across this. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. So there you go. Mystery, right? Interest in historical fiction, right? Clocks and historical mystery surrounding clocks. It all comes together. And it all began when I was 9. It's just crazy. I hope you have enjoyed going down this memory lane with me. Thank you for taking time out of your day to do this with me. It was really fun to just go through and just remind myself where I came from and the stories that I had ideas for that maybe might come to fruition again someday in the future, and remind myself why I love writing and how long I have loved writing. And just that feeling, right? Sometimes we get lost in the other parts of writing, especially now that I'm published. The marketing aspects in particular always seem to bog down my mind. And I have to remind myself every now and then that I enjoy writing. The joy for me is in the writing. And that's why I do this, is because I love the stories that I am telling. I love the characters that I am telling. And I hope that you, if you are an author, if you are a writer, that you too are finding joy in your writing, and that you can think back and remind yourself, why are you doing this? Why are you writing? If you are a booktuber, a reviewer, why are you reading? Sometimes we get so lost in reviewing books and sharing our thoughts and thinking about, how am I going to market this, right? That we forget the original joy that we had in reading or writing or telling a story in any way. And so I hope this has reminded you of some of that. Let me know down in the comments if any of those ideas that I came across, what sounded the most interesting to you. You're like, ooh, you should publish that. Let me know, because I'd just love to know your opinion, and let me know what you're working on currently and what you're enjoying reading. And if you are an author, where did your story start, right? Where did it all begin for you, that fascination with writing and telling stories? So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week with another new video. Thanks.